Yeah, as we know, banks move very slow, right? They are very slow, very outdated. Systems and processes are outdated. Tools are outdated. And I think what the difference is that with these major financial institutions, because their teams are so large, a role there, you're maybe doing one task every day. That's your one task that you do. You don't work on anything else, right? You go to a startup company or a tech company, and you have a million things on your plate, like Jennifer mentioned, and it's a lot to balance. And majority of it, I would probably say at least 60 to 70% of my role, I've never done before. So when I joined Facebook, I was like, you want me to do what? Like my first 6 months, I thought I was going to get fired because I was like, I have no clue what I'm doing whatsoever. But you figure it out and you realize no one else has done it before either, right? And you find your support system there. You reach out, you find a mentor. You find a mentor within your internal communities, within your employee resource groups, online and LinkedIn or Facebook or your schools or whatever it is. And you find the resources in the community to support you with your confidence. And to kind of reiterate, no one else knows what they're doing. But you figure it out, you do your best, and you remember to keep the company goal in mind and what you all are trying to achieve, and you get it done. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, going from doing the same thing every day, right, to being thrown into this world where I got to be creative and really help define what I thought things should look like, and really, had that opportunity and that ownership to see things through, and build it in my vision.
I appreciate you sharing, especially coming into tech, especially if you're working at a startup. Your role is new, and now they're hoping that because of your background, because of your experience, because of your education, you can and help lead on some of the efforts that they're working on. So it's a great opportunity to be able to mold something, create something new, and help the company grow. And at the same time, you're growing at the same time within your profession, the work that you're doing. But at the same time, it can be a little challenging and scary at the same time,
Yeah.
because you're thinking like, I don't know if this makes sense, but let's see where it goes. Let's just throw it to the wall. If it sticks,
Yeah.
great. Let's keep it going. So I completely understand. There's a lot of that. Vanessa, I'm going to pivot to you, and just talking about startups and established tech brands, right? Like the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons of the world, right? Like they are like, they've been around for a number of years, so they pretty much have a solid process going, even though there's a lot of sort of entrepreneurial type of activities happening within those organizations. Sometimes they even have like a division that operates as its own business, as its own company, even though they're under the umbrella of a major org like Google, Facebook, or even Amazon. But nonetheless, hopefully you can talk a little bit about maybe the biggest misconceptions or challenges working at a startup versus one of those brands, because I opportunity come your way.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I 5.5 years at Google. Then last year I spent about 5 months at a startup, and then more recently in August I started at Square. So it's kind of like big, little, and then like Square is kind of right in the middle of those two. So when it comes to challenges, yeah, I would say with big tech, the challenge is the fact that I guess sometimes it feels really big. When I was working on marketing teams, like I was mostly working with marketers all the time, which was great, getting to like learn the lingo, be around people who have expertise in an area that you're in, like is great. But sometimes I felt that it was a little bit siloed. Like I'm not getting to work with people from the engineering side. I'm not getting to work with people. I don't think I ever spoke with a UX researcher really during my time at Google. So you get like very, kind of siloed sometimes, but you get really good at your craft, but you don't get to experience a lot of different things. Then when it comes to startups, obviously it's the entire, opposite scenario. When I was at a startup, it was called Tally. I was the only product marketer in the company. So the challenge with that is that nobody knew like what I did, who I was, like what my purpose was on the team, and having to consistently prove value and be like, okay, this is what product marketing does. You kind of have to fight, insert yourself into conversations with product people and design people and get them to value point of view that you bring, which is another challenge in itself. If you have like a supportive manager or, you know, supportive people around to help facilitate that, that's great. And trying to make those connections for people who can kind of help you get inside of things. So yeah, Square definitely sits in the middle of that, where, you know, on my team, for example, there's about maybe 4 of us who are product marketers of the like kind of, I guess, let's say 60-person team that work on the product that I work on. So we're still a minority. And I still work super cross-functionally. Like I spend probably most of my day with product, UX research, you know, and, you know, that's been great. But there's still, so you kind of get, you know, a little bit of both worlds. So, I mean, that kind of mid-sized tech in some ways is good to get a little bit of both. But if you want to like really excel at like your craft, then maybe big tech. If you want to, you know, really work cross-functionally, maybe startups, really small tech. It just depends on what you're looking for.
Vanessa, I appreciate you sharing that. And for the audience, I hope that you really listened in and took some notes, because Vanessa definitely shared some gems in terms of how she compared and contrast the experience of working within a startup versus the established tech brands that are out there. It's truly, there are some differences. Just like working at a startup, you could easily be hired and walk in and they say, oh, welcome to the team. We don't have your desk quite yet, so hang tight in the lobby. Let's figure that out. And yeah, welcome, because I've actually had that happen to me. And then to Vanessa's point earlier, because it's a startup, you may be working with other folks from other teams who may not be familiar with the work you're doing. They're like, oh, wait, you do UX research? What is that? So, or wait, you're product marketing? Okay, I think I know what that means. Okay. And so there's a lot of education going on, not only with your potential customers, but also educating folks internally. Like, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing every day. And at the same time, this is how we can work together to fulfill the goals and initiatives of this organization. So just keep that in mind as you are pursuing the different tech companies that are out there, because even if you don't end up at any of the established tech brands, you can still thrive and do well and prosper at these startups. But at the same time, those are just some of the things to keep in mind. So I do have a couple more questions left. So just want to remind you all, after that, I'll go right into the Q&A and look at what questions are coming in. I do see that there are several that have come in, and so we have some really good ones there. But I just want to encourage you all to just go back and look at that before I turn it over to the Q&A part of this discussion. So my next question to you all is, with respect to how we look at diversity in tech. We can't not just talk about it, because here we are, we've been successful, we've been able to get into this industry and to be able to move up within it, and we're still continuing to do so. However, there are some challenges along the way. Some of us may have experienced challenges just being able to get in front of a recruiter, whether it was virtually or in person, being able to get through that interview process, because sometimes that process is a long process. Sometimes it can take 3 months just, or even longer, just to get through that, because you're meeting so many different people, having so many conversations. And depending on your role, sometimes they're going to ask you to do assignments, right? Sometimes they're like, okay, you got to pitch a fake product. You have to talk to us how you would handle this particular scenario. And even just getting in, sometimes you are the only one in your department, the only one in your organization, especially if you are at a startup where it's like 50 people, you're the only Black person, or even you're the only Black woman or Black man. So I'm just thinking about that. And so I put that out there because, and this is for anyone on the panel, so please chime in whenever you're ready to do so. But I just wanted to hear from your perspective how, and I know this is a very big question and it's broad, but I'm leaving it that way just to give you an opportunity to answer it in any way that you feel comfortable. But what are your thoughts around diversity in tech? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
I can jump in. I can imagine everyone has thoughts. I'll try not to speak for too long. I could say a lot, so anyone feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to hear more. But yeah, being, you know, in tech now, it's been about 7 years that I've been in the tech industry across these, I guess at this point, like 3 different companies. And it's crazy, like how things have kind of progressed. When I started at Google in fall of 2014, Michael Brown had been murdered maybe about a week before. Like Ferguson was still on fire, things were still happening, and it was like kind of one of the first real bubbling up of like the Black Lives Matter movement. So when I started at, Google, I was coming straight out of college. So I was like, with college person mindset, we need to do a protest, we need to have conversations, because that's what you do in college. So I remember it was myself and one of the coworker friends I just made, who were both kind of, really burning on this topic. So we went to like the Black Googler network, kind of like we did like a bi-weekly lunch for the people in that office. I was in Michigan, and brought up like we want to do like a die-in demonstration where we have signs, we lay down and just kind of, for I forgot exactly how long Michael Brown was on on the street. I think it was maybe 10 minutes or something like that, or maybe it was like some hours and we turned it into minutes, and we're gonna like lay on the ground for that many minutes. And actually, surprisingly, it was really controversial even within the Black Googler group. There were people who were in that meeting that day that like stormed out. They were like, this is inappropriate, we should not be bringing these things to work, and these are Black people. So back then it was controversial. Obviously then you think about the non-Black people in the organization, they had never heard of any of these topics before. Police are killing Black people, what? I don't know about that. Black Lives Matter, what does that mean? Like, this was when people really didn't understand at all. We ended up doing it, and people ended up attending, people loved it. It was a big hit, but it was definitely controversial, and people thought that we were doing something that was really wild. So yeah, so now seeing, 7 years later and how things have gone, obviously we had the reckoning of last year, and people now starting to talk about these things and understand the meaning of the words Black Lives Matter. And, to me, it feels like we're really at the beginning. Like, I was at Google for 5.5 years. I think this was in my last year. I was a part of like Black Googler Network the whole time, like ran the, Black at YouTube chapter and different things like that. And it was in my last year, I kind of took a step back and was like, why has nothing really changed? And this is just, my opinion. At the time, I kind of had a reckoning where I was like, does Google want to fix this, or does tech want to really fix this? Like, Google has self-driving cars. I'm in the Bay, I see a car with no driver, going past me, but there's still only 2% Black people at this company. Like, I don't understand what's going on. So anyway, this was, I left, in January of last year. So before everything went down over the summer. So I haven't been there since. I don't know what's changed. I've seen externally a lot of different new initiatives, but yeah, that's kind of been my experience, seeing like how controversial even talking about these topics were back then to now it being like on everybody's commercial, and just seeing like, what has changed.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, there has definitely has been a lot of activism type of happening within a lot of organizations, and we hear about it in the media, especially from the larger tech brands, but then we know that there's a lot more that's happening internally to other organizations. We may not be aware of it, but it is happening, and unfortunately it's not progressing as far as we would like it to, but that is something for a lot of us to think about. So thank you for sharing the work that you've done and sharing your thoughts around that. I wanted to give an opportunity to the other folks on this discussion to be able to share that. In the interest of time, if you can keep it brief, because I definitely want to get the Q&A, because we have a ton of questions there, and I want to try and get through as many of those as possible.
Yeah, just really quick, I'm going to chime in. I love that you use that. We use it all the time at Chime. So I think the thing that's top of mind for me as a hiring manager, what I find now is not only one, we need to make sure that we're bringing in candidates, Black candidates, underrepresented groups through the door, but also one, pay equity. So we need to make sure that their salary is commensurate with their experience and comparable to the rest of, others at their level, but also what is the environment, the culture that we're creating, so where they feel included and where they want to stay. So those are things that I've really spent a lot of time trying to learn, reach out to my colleagues, trying to see what I can do as a manager, what I can do with my interview panels, thinking about unconscious bias and things like that when I am getting feedback or when they're going through their sessions, having those uncomfortable conversations, right? They can be uncomfortable, right? But they're important that we have them. And then also, challenging my recruiting team as far as salary and things, and really making sure that we do our research. And then also we just hired like a DEI executive, and really, of course, it's great to have her leadership, but also the conversations that we're having within the company is also that this is a company-wide initiative and responsibility across all leadership and all individual contributors, not just her. You know, she may be helping to lead key initiatives, but it's something that we expect to see practice every day across our teams and across our org. So it's really something that I try to keep in mind from an inclusion, you know, not just skin color, you know, other backgrounds, you know, disabilities, whatever it may be. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. You shared a lot there. Jennifer, I do want you to chime in. However, like I said, in the interest of time, I'm going to leave that question there, but keep your mic on because I'm going to have this first Q&A question go to you. I'll turn it over to others who may want to chime in briefly and answer there. So one of the top questions that we got here from the audience is that it sounds like each of us have had a solid set of skills prior to making our way into tech. So with this rapid growth in the digital experience, what type of skills do you think are necessary for success? So what skills, what would you say is necessary specifically within the tech industry?
Sure. Yes, this is a good question because I think so much of the process of getting through the door in tech in general, at least from what I've seen, is translating and framing your skills in the right way. So definitely very on point with these questions, because I've noticed too, there's generally a shift towards, which I think is good, a shift away from, you know, like needing to have a specific degree, for example, or needing to have come from a specific background, and more so being able to market and use and apply your skills in multiple different ways. So there are a bunch of broad ones, I think, generally that are super necessary and come up often, but like can be demonstrated in multiple different ways. The first is problem solving, definitely. I mean, in all of the rounds of my interviews, there was some sort of like hypothetical or behavioral question around, you know, tell me about a core problem that you had to solve and why, because a lot of these companies are just really interested in seeing how you break down problems and what your approach is to solving them. I think another one is being adaptable. So any type of skill set that like relates to adaptability in some way. I know Jamie, you brought that up in terms of how you, I think Vanessa, you probably touched on this as well, as far as being able to pivot and shift the way that you're working or the types of things that you're working on really quickly, depending on what the team needs. And I would say a last one is, it's a little bit less tangible sometimes, and it comes with experience, but being able to shift from tactical to systems level thinking really in a really smooth and fluid way. So often in my work, for example, I have to switch from, okay, what kind of studies do we need to do really specific usability testing on like particular features in a product, to what do we need to know about users in this really broad sense? Like, what are they doing outside of their use of, or like in the broader context of their use of a specific piece of technology? So those are all, I could speak on those for a while, but those are just a couple of comments.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I liked how you mentioned how you just reiterated the point about not necessarily having to have technical background or technical degree to get into tech. That's very important. And I hope the audience can just think about that, because I'll just speak for myself as well. I was a sociology major at UC Irvine, right? Here I am talking about social groups and looking at how different groups interact with each other based on their backgrounds, based on their personal interests or their geographical interests, all of those things. So coming from sociology, and here I am working in marketing in the tech industry. And so in some ways, you can think about pursuing the tech industry, not necessarily thinking about, okay, I have to have a certain degree, I have to come from a certain school. You don't have to. And so there are a lot of opportunities. So here you are, if you're thinking like, okay, I'm completing my college degree or I'm completing my MBA, there are definitely opportunities to make that pivot, make that change, and go into tech. And that leads me to my next question that we got here within the Q&A. And just thinking about, for all those people that are that are participating in this session with us, there are lots of people here who are wondering, like, okay, I'm not coming in, I'm from a non-technical background, right? I'm very interested in tech. So What are your suggestions? Like, how do I make my way in? What should I be thinking about? Aside from the transferable skills that Jennifer just pointed out a moment ago, what specific actions can I take to help me get past the gatekeepers, to help me be able to connect with the folks who can help me get in the door? So I'll turn it over to Vanessa to maybe answer that question.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, Jamie, you said that you're a hiring manager, so I can imagine you have thoughts too. The one thing I'll just quickly say is it's networking. I know a lot of people network to get referrals. Like I have people reach out to me all the time. Can you refer me to Square? And honestly, at this point, for a lot of these big companies, referrals are just kind of like table stakes. Like I can imagine, there's just too many referrals for it to really be a game changer in helping you get that role. So when I say networking, I mean like you should reach out to someone like me to get you connected to either the hiring manager or someone who's on that direct team that can give you the inside scoop. So for example, with the job I have at Square right now, reached out to a friend who worked at Square kind of on an adjacent team to get the inside scoop. Like what's going on with this team? What do they care about? What matters to them? So then I could frame my resume, my LinkedIn around like not just the general skill set, but some of that insider knowledge. Like they told me, okay, this product is in market, but it hasn't really grown and taken off yet. So they're probably looking for someone to help it take off and grow. Those types of things you don't find in the job description. So you need to get some of that information. So then I made sure the examples I had on my resume talked about taking a product in market and growing it and those sorts of things. Yeah. And also connected to someone who was on the direct team who then liked me and then went to the hiring manager and said, we need to hire Vanessa. And so it's a lot of it has to do with networking, which is unfortunate. That's part of the reason why the diversity numbers are as what they are, because if it's only like a 2% Black industry, then how is it going to change? But feel free, even though hopefully I'm not, overextending myself, but feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in Square or any place you see I'm, have a secondary connection at. Hopefully I'll be able to help you because that's what needs to happen.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was really helpful. And just you talking about what you did in terms of how you edited, you adjusted your resume to showcase your interest and your transferable skills to be able to get into the tech industry. Jamie, I will turn this over to you to answer the same question. I'd love to hear from your perspective as a hiring manager. When you receive resumes like that, you can obviously tell within the first 3 to 5 seconds, you're looking at that resume like, oh, okay, they're new to tech. They never worked in tech. From your perspective, how can people be successful in trying to get their foot in the door and be able to get an offer in a role like that?
Definitely. I think Vanessa made some really great points about networking. That's really important to get the insider information. But if you aren't able to do that, and if you're applying directly with your resume, I think that you really need to go through the job posting with a fine-tooth comb. Really look through the keywords, the experience, the things that would fall within the role's responsibilities, and really make sure that your resume reflects and demonstrates that you've done that before, that you're passionate about that, that you have the soft skills, that you have the prior experience, and really make sure that once you do get an opportunity for your phone screen, with that recruiter to really, ask questions that can kind of give you more to, really chew on and think about as you go through the process, so you can learn more about what they're passionate about, right? What they're looking for, things that they enjoy about the company, things that they are looking for the role to solve, right? I think those things are really important. But basically with our recruiting team, they're going to go off the resume. And if you're not saying that you have those specific skills and those keywords that they're looking for, unfortunately, they're going to go on to another candidate who does reflect that information because of sheer volume. So that's the biggest thing that I would recommend. And, use a resume service, reach out to your LinkedIn networks. I love working on resumes. That's one of my little free side hustles. So if you want some support on a financial service in the resume, I can definitely help you there. Definitely feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you
Sandra.
all. Thank you for that. You shared a lot of different things. Oh, I'm sorry, Jennifer. Did you say something? Did I interrupt you?
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. I wanted to, if we have a moment, I wanted to quickly add just one quick thought there.
Sure.
I also wanted to add, I know I've talked with a lot of people that I've mentored who feel just anxious about the fact that they don't have maybe the exact skill set that they need to transfer into a specific role. I think Jamie and Vanessa both touched on really good points about how that needs to be really tight. But if the problem is not having that, like, enough of that skill set up yet. Even if you don't have a particular degree, I've seen people transfer things like from volunteer experience, from like extra coursework. There are a lot of supplemental things that you can do to really beef up your resume or get closer to a strong enough skill set to be a competitive applicant. So happy to talk about that offline too.
And on that note, we're at time. So thank you all so much. Like I said earlier, this is such a big, broad topic. There's just so much to unpack. I feel like we just scratched the surface of this, but I just want to thank you all so much for your time. And I'm offering my, if anyone is interested with any follow-up questions that we weren't able to get to within the Q&A, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. And just as everyone else said, feel free to just reach out, ask your questions, and we'll be able to help out as much as we can, because we want to see more of us in tech. So then that way, the software offerings, the apps truly reflect who we are, our needs, our motivations, and it's more inclusive internally and externally. So thank you all so much. And thank you especially to Jamie, Vanessa, and Jennifer. Thank you so much for your time again today.